Do you think Malaya would be as keen as Singapore on the idea of a merger? Initially, the Malayan Prime Minister Tunku Abdul Rahman was not keen for two reasons. Firstly, he was worried that if Singapore were to join Malaya, there would be too many Chinese, which would upset the racial balance in Malaya. Look at the figures in the table and you will understand his concern. If Singapore and Malaya were to merge, the total number of Chinese would be 3.6 million, 0.2 million more than the total number of Malays. Secondly, he suspected that most of the Chinese in Singapore were sympathetic to the communists, since the communist sentiments had originated from communist China, and Malaya had only just emerged victorious against the communists. He did not want Malaya to have to battle the communist threat again. However, in the space of 2 years, in 1961, Tunku changed his attitude towards the idea of merger. What made him change his mind? Why did Malaya pursue the idea of merger? What were Malaya's reasons for merger? Well, Tunku feared that the communist influence in Singapore would grow and turn Singapore into a communist state. If that were to happen, the threat of spreading communism to Malaya would grow, and he did not want that. If there was a merger, Malaya could join forces with the PAP government to fight off the communist threat. And in order to combat the racial imbalance threat, Tunku proposed that Sabah and Sarawak would join Singapore to merge with Malaya. Since, with the inclusion of Sabah and Sarawak, the Malay population would still outnumber the Chinese population. At the same time, why did Singapore want to pursue the idea of merger? Singapore wanted merger for both political and economic reasons. Politically, Singapore wanted full independence, but Britain would only grant independence if Singapore was part of the Federation of Malaya. Hence, merger was the only way for Singapore to get what she wanted politically. Economically, a merger with Malaya would allow Singapore to set up a common market where goods could be bought and sold freely. Previously, Malaya had introduced taxation on goods traded between both countries, which limited trade. A common market would solve this issue and increase trade and job opportunities at the same time. Hence, you can see why Singapore wanted a merger with Malaya for both political and economic reasons. Now, what were some of the initial terms of merger? For one, Singapore could hold elections to elect her own state government. She would have control of education and labour, but would leave control over armed forces, police and foreign relations to the central government in KL. Also, Singapore citizens would become Malaysian nationals. The PAP government thought that independence through merger was important for Singapore because some members believed that merger would help to solve some of the problems that Singapore was facing in 1959. However, not all PAP leaders were supportive of the merger. Why was this the case? Why do you think there was a split in the views towards merger within the government?